there have been a number of things that don't really warrant a full video, and a lot of things that I'd like to make some updates on because you guys have asked for it a lot. And the first thing I want to show is this thing. So this is an adapter. It's actually an adapter for an adapter, and what it does is it's designed to hold a analog module on the side of the DJI HD goggles so that you could run analog more easily. Now, there are a couple of different module bay options for DJI goggles, one which kind of replaces the whole front like eye plate of the goggles, which I understand people might not be so crazy about taking apart their very expensive DJI goggles to run analog bay on the side, but the truth is that these goggles do analog really just fine. And so these things exist, which are boards that house the kind of, or at least hold the analog module. The problem is that there's nothing to actually house the analog module, and that's what these guys have done. And the reason I even mention this and bring it up at all is because this has been done by a pair of guys, a pair of kids, which are someone's sons, and the father actually contacted me to ask me about manufacturers in the industry that may want to work with them, may take their idea, how to kind of broadcast it a little bit more, and if I think that this is a suitable platform for him to share business ideas, practices, and teach his sons about general business. And this is like the best story I've heard in this industry so far. I mean, there's a lot of stories of people that have kind of gotten into traumatic accidents. I'm one of them, and they kind of use FPV and whatnot to recover and do everything. But like a father teaching their sons about development, business, manufacturing, worldwide e-commerce is just incredible. And so this is made by Maker Boys. If you're looking for something like this, go to their site, check it out, and thanks for them for doing this, and good job to the dad for coming up with this idea to teach his sons about this kind of stuff. Wildfire, Foxeer Wildfire, I think it's called the Wildfire, or some sort of fire. This is Foxeer's answer to the kind of rapid fiery, clear view, receiver flipping, blending kind of technology that's now used in a lot of different receivers in our industry, analog receivers in our industry. And so I got this a couple weeks ago. I've been using it, and honestly, I'm the worst person to test actual signal quality and be able to distinguish between antennas, and if one module is significantly better than the other. It really just looks the same to me. I'll talk about the antennas in a second because those do actually make a difference, but the modules themselves, if you have a rapid fire module, you have some people have noticed that if you're using a camera that's not 100% compatible with the NTSC or PAL standard, you get this kind of very, very slight jittering of the picture, even when you're not flying, just looking through the camera. And that jittering of the picture, I think, has to do with the flipping technology, because when I use the legacy mode on the rapid fire, it doesn't seem to do it. So this Wildfire, Foxeer, whatever it is, has a very similar kind of jittering view, which I think has more to do with the camera than it has with the module. But that's just a small annoyance I wanted to point out. The real issue I have with this module, while it looks really cool, I think it looks really great on the goggles, and the fan on the side, I actually think it's probably more for looks than actual function. You do have the ability to turn it off, and the issue with the fan is that anytime you go up to touch your goggles, your finger gets stuck in the fan and just stops spinning. So it's probably going to pull in hair or whatnot, or dust nicely in there as well. So I don't know if that's going to hold up. The real issue with this module is the user interface. The user interface is cumbersome, to say the least. So in order to, it's just, I don't even know how to go back. Like I went to the menus on the thing. I know it's flickering, you can't see it, but I went to menus on this module, and I can't go back to just the normal channel view, as in just switching channels. In order to change band, you have to actually go into the menu to change the band, and then go back to the channel to switch the channel, like go exit everything, which I don't know how to exit, to switch the channel. Maybe you hold right to exit. You don't even know how to get into the settings. You have to like hold left to get into the settings, and whatever it is, there is an actual OSD on screen in there. But the issue is that while you can use these buttons on top of the goggles, oh, there we go, it reset. Maybe it'll go to the actual, no, see, it doesn't go back to the actual frequency view. It reset because I pushed it by accident and it restarted. Whatever it is, when you go into the menus, you don't go up and down anymore on this switch to go up and down the menus, because that's how it's listed in the picture. You have to move the button side to side, whereas when you're in the channel, you go up and down and switch the channel. So it's just very confusing to use, and it's really cumbersome to go through the menus and set all. It's just a really, really bad user experience. The Rapidfire has a fantastic user experience. It couldn't be better, in my opinion. Like, it really is. You can scan all the channels, all the bands super easily, and there's only one other module I would personally recommend over, or not even over, but next to the Rapidfire module, and that's the TBS module. The TBS module has some other value-added features which may be useful in the near future, or might be useful now. I don't know, I haven't kept track of it. And it'll probably definitely be useful in about 2.5 years when this whole FAA thing starts to take action. They will have some features in there that will make it a lot more legal. Now, moving on to these antennas, TrueRC is my favorite antenna manufacturer. There's a lot of other ones that are good in our industry. ORT is one of them, and another one I just can't think of. But TrueRC is fantastic. They make, when I first started using the TrueRC X-Air antenna, I immediately could tell a difference between the signal quality compared to any other antenna that I had used. And when I used the X-Air 2, the dual X-Air antenna, it was significantly better than even the X-Air antenna. And again, I'm a really bad person to tell if something is better than another with analog video, because it's so hard to distinguish if one is actually better than the other, because if you just step 1 foot over, everything changes. It's really hard to get it really proper, and I'm not going to do some super scientific testing to find a 0.5% difference between modules or antennas of some sort. But when I started using the X-Air antennas, there was an immediate jump in performance in my video signal quality. And so this thing, when I saw it, immediately had to have it, because it's a nice clean way of mounting both of these antennas. While I know it's probably not the smartest thing to have 2 directional antennas, the reality is that this stuff works just as well as my Clover antennas when I'm flying behind myself or off axis or not in the direct view of the antennas. I mean, I understand how the radiation spheres work, but it doesn't seem to be the case in the real world use. It seems to work really well. Or again, I'm an awful person to test the actual signal retention and whatnot, but I love this antenna array. It works fantastically well, and it works better than my previous dual X-Air antenna setup. Not the 2-on-1, but specifically 2 of these, because like this, they kind of overlapped a bit. I was kind of messing with them, and it's a super clean way to attach it to the goggles. The one issue I have with these antennas is that they don't actually stay stuck to the goggles. It comes with a little print, but I haven't found the tape that really holds it to the goggles. It just comes off on its own because the wire is a little bit strong. Now, talking about the goggles themselves, this is the Fat Shark HDO2. I also have the Orqas, and I wanted to do an update on what I think about both of them over time. So I use both of these goggles interchangeably constantly. Like constantly, I'm using both goggles. I'm using the Orqas probably a little bit more than the Fat Sharks, primarily because the DVR is fantastic on the Orqas and they suck on the Fat Sharks. And I need that DVR, not just for YouTube and Instagram or whatnot, but because I like watching my own videos. So I love having the nice DVR video to watch. And so, I mean, I use the Orqas just because of that reason. But if I had to buy one, I still am torn. I still don't know which one I would buy. If DVR is very important to you, then Orqa is a clear choice. If DVR is not that important to you, I might actually lean towards the Fat Sharks. However, I'll go over my annoyances in actual use over time with both of these goggles. And before pointing these out, I would say that both of these goggles are actually very, very, very nice products. They're the best products in our industry for analog, and there's really no wrong choice with either one. These are just my annoyances. I am spoiled in the sense that I have both of these plus the DJI system, and I am using all of them interchangeably constantly. And so the Fat Sharks, starting with the Fat Sharks, the optics are a little bit better than the Orqas. That's a fact. You can't really deny that. Immediately, anybody that looks through the lenses of the Fat Sharks will say, oh yeah, this is definitely clearer. There's a little bit of a very, very minor haze to the Orqa goggles, which may just be the ton of oil that I have on my lens that I can't seem to get off. But whatever it is, the Fat Shark goggles always had slightly better optics. Now, having better optics doesn't mean that they're better. The optics actually need to be closer to my eye in order for me to actually function with the goggles properly. And that's regardless of the individual eye adjustment setting on the goggles, which kind of does fine-tuning of diopters on these on the optics. What that means is that when I wear them, my lashes are constantly getting oils and dirt on my lenses. And because the lenses are kind of protruding a little bit more, anytime I prop these goggles up on my forehead or anywhere else, you get oil all over the lenses. So I'm constantly cleaning these lenses. And anytime I touch these lenses, I lose the focus and I have to readjust the focus. So if there's anything I would do, I'd actually remove the individual eye focus, because it is so frustrating to constantly have to readjust my goggles every single time I put them on my face. Okay, other than that, the power on and off button is totally fine, works great. I really do appreciate the power on and off button. And something else I would note that is, it's subtle, not many people would notice it, but I appreciate it a lot, is that the power plug. I can leave my plug plugged in and it does not drain my battery. It doesn't seem to use any battery at all to leave this power plugged in, even though the button is a software button, it's not a hardware button. Also, these goggles have a fantastic fan on them. The Orqas, on the other hand, have essentially no fan, unfortunately, to defog the lenses, which is quite frustrating, but it's not really that big of an issue in most situations. In some situations, like cold outside, it is going to be an issue. It is quite annoying. Another annoyance is that when you do leave the battery plugged in, there has been exactly 2 times where I left it plugged in by accident in my backpack. I got out, or overnight, and then I got out to where I was going to fly, and my battery was totally dead, and I didn't have anything else with me to actually power my goggles to fly. Otherwise, the goggles actually fit my face a lot nicer than the Fat Sharks, and when I prop them up on my head, I don't get any oil or anything on my lenses. I find myself not really touching the lenses all that much, and the DVR is phenomenal on these goggles. One other very annoying annoyance, which they may have updated with more recent firmware updates, I just haven't been keeping up with it, is the time to turn on. Oh, and that's something I forgot to talk about with the the Foxeer module as well. The time to turn on for the Orqas is like 30 seconds. I don't know why. Mine are just so slow. It has the Christmas man or the Santa Claus logo on it. It just doesn't seem to go away forever. I've turned my goggles like 3 minutes in advance to fly. It's so frustrating. I'm sure they will have updated that in a more recent firmware version. The HGO2s are not that great either. However, most of that delay comes from the rapid fire, which takes still like 5 to 10 seconds to turn on. The Foxeer module turns on instantly. That is the one biggest benefit of the Foxeer module. So if you don't ever change your channel, that's fine. All this being said, I would still maybe strongly consider the DJI Goggles over both Fat Sharks or Orqas, because while the first time I used these goggles, I had very prototype firmware on it. The more recent firmware, which is not recent anymore, it's been out for a while, is fantastic. I just cannot understand how they can squeeze so much magic out of a 5.8 gigahertz signal. I'm using both the goggles and the controller because I'm way too lazy to wire in a separate controller, and I just cannot believe how good everything is. And the quad that I'm primarily using it on is this Cinewhoop here, which has the antenna. It's a Vista unit. It has the antenna kind of crammed down below here, and it's right behind the camera and a nice big battery here, and it still seems to have no issue at all, which is just fantastic. So for somebody starting out, I would still recommend analog, and I would recommend the cheap Yashin goggles that I have linked in the description below, because it's just the easiest way to do anything, because it's just so cheap and it works so well and has a good user experience at this point. But if you're considering spending $500–600 on a pair of goggles and a module or whatnot, I would caution not getting DJI at this point, which I'm sorry to say, but that's the honest truth. Also, something you may have noticed is that I have this analog module on the side of my goggles, except that I never run analog on my DJI goggles. Even though it does analog totally fine, although it's still in a sub-menu, it's a little bit funky and wonky to use, it does do analog totally fine. The reason I'm using this module is because, number one, the wire that I was using to power my goggles broke internally, and so I'm using this as my powering module, and I'm not really too keen on relying on a random manufacturer's BEC built into this board. It does give me a nice XT30 that if it does break, I can easily just resolder it. It's not a big deal, and I can just plug my normal XT30 batteries into, and I could use up to 6S on this module, so I will never not have a battery to power my goggles, which is fantastic. Moving on, this is the Cloud 149. So this is the most well-known, probably the most well-known Cinewhoop frame at this point because it's just so darn popular. This is like a $30 Cinewhoop frame. And when I kind of started investigating Cinewhoops and ducted things after running Stan FPV's ducts and recognizing that no, there is a very significant gain to be had from ducts, I started investigating a lot harder. And so I came across this frame, which is very easy to come across if you just type in Cinewhoop into Google. And what I noticed immediately is that it has molded ducts, which admittedly are not very good, not very well designed to give you that duct kind of effect. But hey, they work fantastic as prop guards, and they still give you some sort of a duct kind of effect. And what's so special about these ducts is that they are freaking cheap. They have a fantastic brass inserted mounting platform, plus a hole over here to get your wires through. And the mounting system that they've designed for this duct is just like, whoever came up with this design is, kudos to them. They did a really good job because it's really efficient. The molded duct, I can't stress enough that this is a molded duct, and that makes it so cheap and easy to use everywhere. Comes out to 10.9 grams. Very efficient to mount it to the frame. I mean, I was really sold immediately when I saw this, and I started designing with this duct in mind immediately. Now, taking a look at the rest of the frame, this is a 3-inch frame, and you may kind of recognize that the carbon patterning is not quite the direction that we want to see it down the arms, and it's not even a 90-degree angle on the arms, so it couldn't be if they wanted to. But the frame has been cut from quasi-isotropic carbon, which means when you do pick it up and flex it in your hand, this thing is a lot more rigid and durable feeling than you would expect for something that is been cut off axis. And that's how I know that it's not cut from the regular 090 layup. It's at least been cut from some sort of other layup than the 090 layup. Now, that being said, I'm still not a fan of the design because it does have these holes for a 30 by 30 mounting board, which I don't know why anymore. It does weaken the arms quite a bit. The frame is still quite weak. It's pretty light, but it is quite weak. I just hate monobody designs, but there have been some concerns and issues with monobodies as well, with Cinewhoops as well. But I took this design, I essentially didn't take the design at all. I just took the ducts. I essentially just stole the ducts. So these manufacturers in China love to steal everything from Western markets, or pretty much anybody that has any traction in marketing of any sort or any attention anywhere. They'll just take whatever is going on that marketing and just use it. I'm going to do the same thing with them. So I'm going to take this duct and I'm going to design my own designs with this duct. And I'll explain my intention about that in a minute, but I'll show you my designs so far right now. So this is my Cinewhoop at the moment. I've been running this, and like I said, I'm really not a fan of monobody designs. But the dilemma with this kind of a system or this kind of a setup is that you can't, it's really hard to get a multi-unit design that doesn't block all the holes to mount your electronics on and is still lightweight. And I have a couple designs that are just really cumbersome to manage and use. And I am absolutely not a fan of things that are difficult and annoying to use. So this particular design is a monobody, and I have a couple of other multi-unit designs that are on the way that I'm going to be testing for potentially replacing this one, because the issues with monobody is that they're very expensive to cut. It's really hard to sell a nice, good value frame when it's a monobody because it takes so much carbon to cut. If you're using individual arms or just a multi-unit system, then it's much easier to pack those parts on the carbon sheet, and so you get a lot more yield out of your carbon, and it becomes a lot more cost-effective and easier to manage later on when you break an arm and whatnot. But that being said, you're taking a look at this design. It is using 090 carbon. The arms are 90 degrees to each other, and when you hold it in your hand and flex it, you immediately feel that it is quite durable feeling. But with a 500 to 600 gram all-up weight, with the GoPro and the battery and whatnot, still going to pose quite a bit of a challenge. Anyways, I designed this for use with the Vista unit because I think that is really going to take off like crazy soon, because I've been having so much success with the Vista unit. And there's a couple other designs coming. I'm just kind of showing it just up front. And my rationale to use these ducts is not only because they're cheap, easy thing to just say, hey, use this. If you break it, it's another one. It's like $3. Here's another duct. Just screw it on. Instead of getting these nice Stan FPV ducts, which are like $15 a piece or $20 a piece, it's much more reasonable to just have one of these ducts that are cheap and easy and also very light and have a great mounting platform. So I've been talking to Stan, and his ducts are a night and day difference over any other duct that I've used. I mean, I don't care about the thrust performance of anything else. I don't care about anything else. All I care about is my ability to actually control my throttle and control my altitude really smoothly and softly. And the special thing about these ducts is that not only do they not have that sticky or gummy throttle feel, it's also more efficient than not using them on a 3-inch high weight platform. You get more flight time, and it also makes it quieter somehow. So my rationale of using these is to use this mounting platform and standardize that so that then Stan can make his ducts mount to that same platform, and so his ducts become extravagantly cheaper because he doesn't have to do all this crazy printing on here. It becomes just a ring, so it's much easier to print, and he can sell it for much lower cost. And in essence, it's bringing the ducted Cinewhoop platform way down in cost, which is great. And so it's a work in progress still. Something else you may have noticed is the camera mount on this thing. So the mounting platform that I'm using on the Cinewhoop, or the one that's going to finally come, is the same mounting platform that I'm going to be using on the upcoming 5-inch Cineglide, which is the cinematic 5-inch frame, as well as a 4-inch 3-inch. It's going to be a 4-inch fuselage. That all of these are for DJI. We'll work with analog, but they're intended also for the Vista system. The fuselage is designed for the specific electronic stack, a wide variety of stacks, but whatever it is, you'll see it's a specific platform of electronics, and also the Vista unit. And so this mount will also be interchangeable between all of them, and the mount is very easy to take off, has no nuts or anything, it's all press nuts. It's just 4 screws, you unscrew and put the other one on. On the same note, I would show you guys this. So this is the new racing frame that will be coming pretty soon as well. There's a lot of racing frames out there. If you take a look at the FPVCycle site, you'll find a lot of coming soon kind of pictures as well as products. And this is one of them, and it's been shown before. I've shown this before. It's a really nifty little racing frame design. There's a lot of racing frames out there. I won't even talk too much about the frame itself. Just read the description in that review or that product page, and you'll see it's in the description of this video below. What I do want to discuss is the Zeus 6S HDLRC all-in-one board on this build that I've done. And so it's a really nice board in the sense that it's super easy to build and super easy to set up. And on top of that, I'm using a nice little 20x20 VTX on top. Like, it's so simple to set up this whole board and system. The trouble is that in the past, I have use HDLRC electronics, and I've pointed out that they don't quite deliver the instantaneous amps that you want for some reason, the ESCs, and there have been some issues with the actual ESCs as well, and this is unfortunately no different. I have let them know about it, but it's kind of it's a soft recommendation to use this board. While it does look fantastic and it should really hold up and perform to par, I had this thing one of the ESCs desynced or gave up or something, and the quad fell out of the sky going 120 miles per hour in an empty field, but still it almost killed me because it was coming towards me. Fortunately, it rolled and tumbled and didn't actually come anywhere near me, but hey, something I wanted to point out. The next thing I want to discuss is the Foxeer Nano Toothless. So this is coming, I think it's already out, but the Nano I love this color so much. But the Nano Toothless is the nano version of the larger Toothless half-inch sensor camera from Foxeer, and while it does have this nano size, still has a half-inch sensor. The dilemma has been that they can't quite find a lens that gives us the very wide angle that we want and the wide aperture that helps the sensor shine, as in do well, not shine as in actually shiny. So the lens that this one has on it is the 2.1 millimeter lens. And this lens is actually fantastic. It has great low light performance, really sharp, crisp picture. Everything is really beautiful about it. But the 1.8 millimeter lens version, which is the version that I personally prefer, and I think most pilots, I would say the vast majority of the market prefers the viewing angle of the 1.8 millimeter lens. I know the sensor size will change that, but you understand what I'm saying. Everybody prefers the wider angle view. It's the same lens as on the Razor or the Nano Razor or any other nano camera, and so the aperture on this thing is super tiny, and I'm focusing on aperture even though it's not really, that's not the significant factor here that's making the difference. The lens quality is what's making the difference, and the actual glass quality in this one, or plastic or whatever it is, polycarbonate quality in this smaller lens or the wider angle lens is so poor that it makes the Toothless large half-inch sensor look no better than the Nano Razor. While the low light capability of the Toothless Nano is just maybe a touch better than the Nano Razor, it's really unfortunate to see. And so I'm kind of moving towards the Baby Rattle, I still don't know how to say the name. And I'm just hoping that Caddx has improved their quality control a whole lot, which I've gotten into a lot of arguments with them about it. They really hate me about it, but I really don't dislike Caddx. I really love them as a company. They're great. They're doing a lot of good stuff. It's just I really want their quality control to be good because I love their products. I want to be able to use them. Moving on, here is my Happymodel. I don't even know what it's called anymore. It's their Whoop, the all-in-one board Whoop, which has the VTX and the receiver and everything built into it, as well as the Nano 3 on top. Well, I can't believe I can't think of this. Mobula 6, whatever it is. This thing performs so awesome. It's so hard not to enjoy flying it. The trouble is that Happymodel is not a very reliable company, and so I have counted the number of flights I have on this quad, and it is exactly 18 flights until an ESC burnt out and I no longer have a quad that works. I also broke the frame exactly 3 times, and the frame actually came in the box pre-broken as well. Other thing I would point out is that these Nano Nectar 300 milliamp batteries from Newbie Drone are actually some of the best performing Whoop batteries, sub 450 milliamp Whoop batteries that I've used. I don't use a lot of them, but this one particularly knocked my socks off, so I'm really thrilled to point that out. In that same respect, I would say that the TinaWhoop Frame will be coming to FPVCycle. I spoke to Diatone already, and I'm going to carry this frame because it is so freaking durable. It carries a full nano camera really nicely. With the Baby Rattle, it's going to be awesome, and the Mamba all-in-one board is going to be great, and then the DVR board that we have coming back in stock shortly, you're going to get a little Whoop that has fantastic DVR recording abilities and a frame that is so freaking durable that you can give it to any beginner just fine. Now, speaking on behalf of FPVCycle, again, the motors, unfortunately, were supposed to arrive today, but didn't actually arrive today. So the 1202.5 and 1303 are in shipping. They were supposed to, FedEx said that they were arriving today, but they haven't actually showed up. So they don't actually have a time frame of when it'll be delivered, but they say sometime soon because it is supposed to be 2-day shipping, and it's not here. It's been 3 days now. So watch for those. Go to the site and sign up for the notification, and you'll be notified if you're looking for them. Also, videos about both of these quads, the TP3 and the Baby Tooth, will all be coming when the things are actually in stock, because people tend to get very angry when I make things and they can't get it, which I totally understand. I'm trying my hardest here. I can't do anything about how things ship and how things get here. That being said, I love the Baby Tooth so much. This is like my current FPV pride and joy. It's so much fun to fly. I just can't get enough of this one little quad. The unfortunate thing about this particular setup is that the Nano 3 camera from Runcam is what makes it so awesome, because it's such a nice little camera and it weighs like 1 gram. The problem is that the lens manufacturer has gone out of business as a result of the COVID-19 spread, and so we are left with the same old camera options. While Runcam is looking for a new lens for the camera, they've sent me a couple and they haven't quite been up to par. They don't have the same viewing angle, they're murky, they're not quite as nice. So we're kind of going back to our previous options. There is another camera from Newbie Drone that has a 3rd-inch sensor on it as well as another camera from Beta FPV that has a 3rd-inch sensor as well. Both of those are actually not bad. They're a little bit expensive, I think, for my taste, and I don't think the picture quality is quite that significant of an improvement over like the Whoop cams. I mean, these cams are so crappy to begin with that it's hard to even say that one is better than the other. I'm gonna be investigating more about these cameras, and I'll choose one of them to carry in the store. But we're gonna be getting the 199C camera, which is the alternative to the OV231 camera, but the 199C is actually on a slightly smaller board and it fits inside the B-Brain V2 mount, which is super duper nice, and I'm really looking forward to those because now I can start building more of these things and they're so much fun. The last thing I want to discuss is the this controller. So this is I found it finally. I've lost this controller for so long. This is the Jumper T16. I think this is a great controller. I don't love it because there's no need to have such an enormous screen on this controller. There is no need for a lot of the stuff on this controller, at least for our industry, even for planes. The gimbals are not full throw. They're slightly smaller than even the TBS Tango 2, which is a small controller and it has big gimbals for such a small controller, and I'm not a super big fan of the grip. My primary controller is still the Foxeer X9 Lite. I think that's a great controller for the fit and size and feel. But what's coming is the Radiomaster TX16S, I think, which I don't even know if it's the same company as Jumper or not. It's so hard to tell if these companies are even related to one another. But that thing is supposed to have a number of improvements over this controller, which make it seem like it will be the end-all be-all of controllers for the most part. So it has USB-C charging, USB-C connection. It has space for 18650 cells inside the casing. It's going to have the same casing shape and design as the Jumper T16. It's got the same huge screen. It has apparently full-size gimbals. They're saying full-size Hall sensor ball bearing gimbals, which is really nice, really neat. A couple other features that I'm seriously looking forward to for $130, and it comes with built-in the ability to do D8, D16 binding, which allows you to run those whoops and all those random toy boards out there, which is fantastic. The dilemma is that I really love the Tango 2 a lot. The trouble is that for me specifically, I fly so much random stuff that I really need the ability to have that D16, D8 ability built into my controller, and unfortunately you just don't get that with the Tango 2. And I've tried to kind of crossfire everything, which I have crossfired my baby tooth, and I would absolutely recommend it to anybody. I mean, it's so awesome to have total freedom of flight when you're flying this thing. Like, your control will totally outdo your video signal, which is super nice. I hope not to have to retire all my controllers, including this Tango 2, for the Radiomaster T16S, because if there's anything I like, I prefer to have one of something that kind of takes care of everything rather than multiple of everything to go between various protocols and whatnot. Oh yes, there's one other thing I wanted to talk about, which I've had for many, many months now, probably almost a year. This is the Chair-pak. This is the Chair-pak, and I haven't actually made a video on this particular product because I'm not a fan of this product, unfortunately. It's just not for me. It's not a bad product, it's just not for me. It's also a product that was designed and developed and manufactured by the community, really, a community of people in this industry. So it's really hard for me to just, I'm not bashing it, but I don't want to kind of hurt them, because I give reviews of things in my own eyes, and while I try to take into consideration everybody and other people that may want such features and things, it's really hard for me to look at this product and say, okay, while it's a phenomenal chair, it really is a chair-pak by the name, as the name implies. It is a chair-pak. It's chair first, pack second. It's not, I wouldn't even put the pack on there. It's just chair with a bag. The issue that I have with it is that the actual pack part of it is essentially useless to me. So if you open this thing, that's not actually, the pack isn't where you put your quad. There's actually a bag inside the bag that you're supposed to put, like this is the actual backpack. This is it. Like, you carry all this stuff, which granted it does have that chair, but this is all you get. And so I can't even fit my controller and everything in here. I mean, you're supposed to put your controller and your quad and everything inside this thing. And when you open it, all you see is a ton of padding, which I guess is a great value because you get a lot of stuff with it. But it's like, it's just not for me. However, I would say that their primary objective of putting a chair on the back of a backpack, fantastic. They did a fantastic job of putting that chair, just designing that chair, because the chair on this thing is so sturdy, and when you sit on it, you really are gratified by the quality and support and the rigidity and just robustness of the chair on this backpack. Well, I struggle with the straps, which I'm probably not doing correctly because it is caught inside the chair itself. Well, the folding mechanism is not perfect. There we go. There you go. That's the backpack. The thing weighs about 25 pounds, 20 pounds with nothing in it. And that's the Chair-pak. I'm going to leave it at that. So, yes, that's it all. That's everything for now. I mean, I'm not getting everything, but missing some stuff still. lastly, I actually do have a Patreon, which I'm really awful at pointing out, but I'm just cleaning things up. That's why I made this video. I'm cleaning things up, and I'm sending a bunch of things out to Patreons, and these are the people that I've sent stuff to already, and about an equal number of people are going to get things when I'm sending all this stuff out, because I actually have time to send all this stuff out now. So take care, stay safe, and floss your teeth. Take your mask off, floss your teeth, put it back on. Bye-bye.